In the shimmering haze of a city skyline at midnight, Elena stood motionless on the penthouse balcony, the wind tugging at the hem of her silk dress like an impatient memory. 30 floors below, the metropolis thrummed, car horns, distant laughter, the low growl of delivery scooters, but up here the world felt suspended. In her trembling fingers was a photograph taken with a cheap disposable camera 10 years earlier. Rain-slicked street, a bakery awning, a boy no older than 12 accepting a loaf of bread as though it were salvation itself. The edges of the photo had softened with time and handling, the colors had faded to sepia dreams. Across from her stood the man who had once been that boy. Alex Rivera, now 22, clean-shaven, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than her mother's house, looked at her with eyes that hadn't changed. They were still the same dark, burning eyes that had locked onto hers in the downpour and said, without words, "I will never forget this." "I kept my promise," he said, voice low and rough with emotion he could no longer hide. "You're mine now." The sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples of joy, terror, disbelief spread through Elena's chest. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to run into his arms and never let go. Instead she whispered the question that had haunted her for a decade. "But are you still you?" Alex's jaw tightened. For a moment the billionaire vanished and the street kid reappeared, scrawny, bruised, fiercely determined. "I'm still the boy who ate your bread like it was the last meal on earth," he answered. "I just learned how to build an empire so I could come back and ask you to share the table." Elena's tears fell freely now. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold. And somewhere in the silence between them, the past 10 years began to speak. Rewind. 10 years earlier. Eldoria Village. Late monsoon season. The sky had been the color of wet slate for 3 days straight. Water dripped from every corrugated roof, every sagging power line, every mango tree heavy with unripe fruit. Inside Harlan's bakery the air was thick with yeast and damp heat. Elena Morales, 18 and already the household's only reliable income, was shaping the last batch of pão de sal for the evening rush that never came. Her mother Sophia sat in the back room on a low stool, attempting to mend a school uniform. Every few stitches she would pause, flex her gnarled fingers, and let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "Rest, Mama," Elena called softly. Sophia gave the stubborn smile of a woman who had outlived grief but not duty. "If I rest, who pays for the medicine?" Elena had no answer. She turned back to the window, and froze. A boy stood across the narrow street, half hidden beneath the tin awning of the abandoned barber shop. Shirt once white, now gray and clinging to ribs that looked sharp enough to cut. Shorts tied at the waist with frayed rope. Bare feet planted in a puddle that reflected the bakery's warm yellow light. He wasn't begging. He was simply staring. At the trays of golden loaves cooling behind the glass, at the steam rising from fresh pão, at Elena herself. Something cracked open inside her chest. She didn't ask Mr. Harlan. She simply took the largest loaf that hadn't sold, still too hot to touch properly, wrapped it in a clean tea towel, ladled vegetable broth into a chipped enamel cup, and stepped out into the rain. The boy startled when she approached, body tensing like a stray cat ready to bolt. "It's okay," she said, kneeling so they were eye level. Rain dripped from her braid onto her collarbone. "I'm not going to hurt you. Here. It's still warm." He looked from the bread to her face, searching for the trick. When none came, hunger won. He tore into the loaf with both hands. Steam curled up around his face. Broth dribbled down his chin. Between gulps he managed fragments. Fire, parents gone, 3 winters ago, walking ever since. Elena listened without pitying noises. She knew pity could wound worse than cruelty sometimes. When the bread was half gone and his breathing had steadied, he wiped his mouth on his sleeve and looked at her with unnerving seriousness. "I'm Alex." "Elena." A long silence. Rain drumming on tin. Then, very quietly. One day I'll be rich. Really rich. And when I am, he swallowed. You're mine. I'll come back and take care of you. I promise. Elena smiled, gentle, a little sad. That's a beautiful dream, Alex. It's not a dream, he said fiercely. It's a promise. She ruffled his wet hair. Then keep it close. Promises are heavy. They need strong hands. He nodded once, solemnly, as though taking an oath before a judge. Then he stood, clutched the remaining half-loaf to his chest like armor, and disappeared into the gray curtain of rain. Elena returned to the bakery, clothes soaked, heart strangely full. She never expected the promise to survive the night. But promises, like seeds planted in poor soil, sometimes take the longest to grow. Alex walked for 3 days with that half-loaf. He ate one small piece at dawn, one at dusk. The taste of kindness lingered longer than the bread itself. He hitched rides on goods trucks heading toward the capital. Slept curled inside empty rice sacks. Learned quickly which drivers were safe, the ones who shared their tiffin, and which were not, the ones who looked too long. The city greeted him with indifference. Neon signs. Exhaust fumes. Horns that never stopped. He slept under flyovers, washed in public fountains, begged outside temples until the priests shooed him away. Older street boys found him within a week. They called him Bone because he was all angles. They taught him the rules. Never sleep in the same place twice. Never accept food from strangers unless you watch them eat first. Never cry where anyone can see. He learned fast. One January night, behind the fish market on 14th Street, 4 boys older and bigger decided Bone had been lucky too long. They wanted his coins, 7 rupees earned carrying crates, and the small cloth bag that held his only possessions, a rusted keychain shaped like a bird, his mother's, a photograph of his parents smiling in front of their old house, and the last dried crust of Elena's bread wrapped in oilcloth. He fought. Teeth. Nails. A broken brick. He lost. When consciousness returned, pain was everywhere, ribs, jaw, left eye swollen shut. He tasted blood and dirt. Then hands, surprisingly gentle, lifted him. Easy, Mijo. You're safe. The voice belonged to a man in his late 50s. Graying hair. Grease-stained coveralls. Smell of motor oil and tobacco. Name, Isidro Ruiz. Occupation, mechanic. Side hustle, taking in strays who looked like they wouldn't make it to morning. Ruiz carried Alex to the tiny apartment above his garage. Cleaned the wounds with antiseptic that burned like fire. Fed him congee with bits of chicken. Let him sleep on the cot in the storeroom. The next morning Ruiz handed him a small wrench. You stay, you work. No charity. Alex stayed. For 2 years he lived in that grease-scented world. Ruiz taught him everything. How to listen to an engine's heartbeat. How to find the lie in a customer's story about, it just stopped. How to weld without burning your fingers to bone. How to be proud of work that left your hands black at the end of the day. Alex soaked it up like parched earth after rain. He slept 4 hours a night. Studied repair manuals by flashlight. Saved every coin in a tin can beneath the cot. And every night, before sleep took him, he touched the oilcloth packet that still held the last crumb of Elena's bread. I'm coming, he whispered into the dark. Just wait. Fate, however, had other plans. November. Cold snap. Faulty extension cord. Pile of oily rags. Fire. It started small, a flicker, a lick of flame. Within 90 seconds the garage was an inferno. Alex woke to smoke so thick he couldn't see the door. He found Ruiz unconscious on the floor, overcome by fumes. Dragged him down burning stairs. Coughed blood for weeks afterward. They escaped with their lives. Nothing else. The garage, gone. Tools, gone. Ruiz's savings, hidden in a coffee tin behind the air compressor, gone. They slept that first week in a public park, sharing one blanket and the last of Ruiz's cigarettes. Ruiz's lungs never fully recovered. Alex scavenged food. Fixed scooters on street corners for whatever people could pay. Begged medicine when Ruiz's cough turned wet and dangerous. Every night he looked at the city skyline, those unreachable towers of glass and steel, and made the same vow. I will build something bigger than fire. In Eldoria, Sophia's decline accelerated. The arthritis reached her hips. Walking became a negotiation with agony. Sewing became impossible. The small income Elena earned at the bakery was no longer enough. She sold her mother's gold bangles, the last remnant of her father's love. She sold her own winter coat. She worked double shifts. Maria, married now, a toddler on her hip, begged her to consider proposals. There are good men here, Elena. Men who would take care of Sophia. I know. But every suitor felt like a door closing on something she couldn't name. One afternoon a cousin who drove trucks between villages and the capital brought a folded piece of paper. No envelope. Just handwriting she recognized instantly. Elena. I'm alive. Working with a mechanic named Ruiz. Garage burned down last month. Lost everything again. But I'm still learning. Still saving. Still coming. Alex. She cried so hard Maria thought someone had died. She wrote back on the back of a bakery receipt. Alex. I'm still here. Still waiting. Don't stop. Elena. The letters continued, sporadic, smudged, carried by whoever was heading in the right direction. His grew longer, more confident. Hers stayed short, hopeful, careful. Then Sophia suffered a small stroke. Elena stopped writing. She couldn't bear to tell him how bad it had become. She couldn't bear the thought that he might come back only to find her broken by duty. Alex, 19 now, sold his first invention. A pocket-sized diagnostic tool machine from scrap parts. A small chain of repair shops bought the rights for almost nothing. He used every rupee for community college tuition. Night classes. Day jobs. 4 hours sleep. He lived on instant noodles and determination. At 20 he won a Regional Innovation Award. Prize, 50,000 rupees and a feature in a local business magazine. He bought Ruiz a small one-bedroom flat with a balcony where the old man could sit in the sun and breathe easier. Then he hired the first private investigator. Find a girl named Elena Morales. Last known in Eldoria village. Worked at Harlan's bakery 10 years ago. She fed a starving boy once. That's all I have. They found her. Engaged. To an accountant named David. Alex sat in his new office, still just a rented room above a laundromat, and stared at the report until the word swam. Engaged. Stable. Safe. Everything he wasn't when he left. He almost stopped searching. Almost. But that night he opened the oilcloth packet for the first time in years. The crumb of bread was dust now. He touched it anyway. I promised, he said aloud. The next morning he told the investigator. Keep looking. I need to know she's happy. Even if it's not with me. Months later the investigator returned with new information. The engagement had ended quietly. No drama. No public fight. David had understood. Elena was back in Eldoria, caring for her mother full-time. Alex bought a plane ticket. Then cancelled it. Too soon. Instead he built. Rivera Innovations moved into a real office. Hired 12 employees. Launched 3 new products. Made his first million at 23. Bought Ruiz a proper house with a garden. Hired a full-time nurse. Then, only then, did he allow himself to act. He preserved the original bread wrapper from that rainy day. Carefully flattened, placed in a velvet box. He wrote a single line on a card. I never stopped looking. He had it delivered by courier to Eldoria. No return address. Just the wrapper. And the promise. Elena received it on a Tuesday. Same day of the week, 10 years later. She sat on the porch steps, held the wrapper to her chest, and sobbed like the 18-year-old girl who had knelt in the rain. 2 days later she traveled to the city. Told no one. Checked into a cheap guest house near the train station. Spent 3 days asking questions. Found the address of Rivera Innovations. Walked past the sleek glass building 4 times before she had the courage to enter the lobby. Security stopped her. I'm here to see Alex Rivera. Do you have an appointment? No. But he'll want to see me. She gave her name. 10 minutes later Alex appeared, running, tie askew, sleeves rolled up. They stared at each other across the marble lobby. Neither spoke. Then Elena lifted the bread wrapper. You kept it. Alex nodded, eyes shining. I kept everything. They went to a small park nearby. Sat on a bench beneath a rain tree. Talked until the streetlights came on. He showed her scars. She showed him hers, not on skin, but in the lines around her eyes, the way her shoulders stayed tense even when she smiled. They kissed when the park emptied. Tentative. Then desperate. Then gentle again. Challenges arrived like uninvited guests. Sophia refused to meet him at first. He's rich now. Rich men forget where they came from. David sent one polite message. I hope he deserves you. Truly. Corporate rivals launched a smear campaign. False safety reports. Stock dipped. Lawsuits threatened. Elena refused to stand on the sidelines. She read every document. Found the pattern. Traced the leak to a former employee. Gave Alex the evidence on a quiet Sunday morning over coffee. He looked at her across the kitchen table. You're the best partner I never knew I needed. She smiled. I've been practicing for 10 years. Sophia finally met him. Watched the way he held Elena's hand, like it was the only solid thing in the world. Softened. Take care of her heart, she told him. The rest we can fix. The proposal happened on the balcony where the story opened. No helicopters. No fireworks. Just stars. A simple ring, platinum band, 1 diamond the size of a promise. Inside engraved. From one rain to every tomorrow. Elena said yes before he finished asking. Their wedding was held in Eldoria Square. Jacaranda trees in full bloom. Lanterns strung between branches. Ruiz walked Elena down the aisle, oxygen tank on wheels, grin wide. Maria was matron of honor, toddler on hip. Sophia sat in the front row, hands steady for the first time in years. David came. Shook Alex's hand. No words needed. After the vows, Alex and Elena slipped away to the old bakery steps. Sat where they first met. Shared a fresh loaf. Still warm. She tore a piece. Offered it to him. He took it gently. This time he didn't devour it. He savored. They built more than wealth. Rivera Innovation started a foundation, free vocational training for street children. Elena opened Panda Esperanza, bakeries that gave jobs to single mothers and free meals to kids who looked like Alex once did. They adopted twin girls left at a fire station. Named them Luz and Esperanza. Every year on the anniversary they return to Eldoria. Sit beneath the awning. Tell their daughters the story. Not of money. Of bread. Of promises kept through fire and time. And every time Elena looks at Alex, silver now threading his dark hair, laugh lines framing those same fierce eyes, she still sees the boy who said, "You're mine." And every time he looks back, he still means it. More than ever. If this story wrapped itself around your heart the way that Rainy Promise wrapped around two lost souls, please leave a like and subscribe. Some kindnesses really do echo forever. Loudly crying face red heart.